Welcome back to MedTech's Empire State Biomed Focus Series, our Innovator Spotlight. And we turn now to really a terrific innovator, frankly, in several regions in upstate New York, but most recently with an exciting expansion into the North Country and a collaboration with Clarkson University. I want to welcome aboard Kelsey Moody, the CEO of Ichor Life Sciences. Kelsey, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, my pleasure, Wen.
So, Kelsey, I guess we'd like to start with the kind of the question that we ask everybody. Help us understand Ichor Life Sciences. What's the problem you're tackling? What's the solution that you're offering?
Yeah, so Ichor Life Sciences is a premier contract research organization. And so what we do is we support mid-tier and large pharmaceutical companies and biotech companies really to develop new drugs. So everything involved in drug development from ideation through kind of pivotal proof of concept in vivo studies. So, mouse and rat testing, that sort of thing, we do completely in-house. And we support at any point in time anywhere from 20 to 50 pharmaceutical clients in that capacity.
And I know, at least in your origin, you had a focus in the longevity and life extension places. Is that still a primary focus for Ichor Life Sciences, or are you broader than that today?
That is still a major focus and area of core competency, but we are broader than that also. Without getting too much into the nuts and bolts, as we were working on a variety of internal programs in the aging space, there's a lot of technical nuance for how some of the molecular targets that people are trying to develop drugs for, how you can go about studying those and actually developing drugs to go after those targets. And kind of the workflows associated with that are very different than traditional workflows for going after kind of the targets that the pharma industry has been going after for the last 10 or 20 years. And what's been very interesting to us on the service side is as we started expanding our client base, the workflows and the technical problems that big pharma is seeing with the new targets that they're going after are the same technical hurdles that is facing the aging space as they're trying to develop drugs to allow people to live longer, healthier lives. So from our perspective, it's been really interesting to be able to support kind of both efforts and be able to see so many different programs and really understand the technical hurdles that is burdening all of drug development at this point.
And tell me, if you can, what's your vision for Ichor Life Sciences? Where do you see this organization heading over the near-term future?
Yeah, so our goal is to be a complete pipeline from ideation through first-in-man studies to be able to develop new drugs. My ideal goal is to hold about maybe 60 or 70% of Ichor's capacity to support our existing and growing client base, and then reserve additional capacity to run our own internal programs. Ichor, with the proceeds from our contract work, have funded several startup companies in Central New York and in the North Country, and we want to be able to support those companies as well as our own internal initiatives. So kind of a blend of internal programs as well as client-focused service offerings.
And if we can, let's turn to Kelsey. Help me understand, Kelsey. Give me a bit of your origin story. You've got some of it, and I would recommend it to folks who haven't necessarily found their way to your website. But you've got some terrific pictures and a timeline going back to the kind of the origin in a laboratory in your living room, which I think is a terrific twist on kind of the famous tech giants who start in their garage. Where does Kelsey Moody get his start? What brought you along on your entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah, so my goal from day one had really been to be able to start a pharmaceutical company in advanced drug development. So I completed undergrad in biochemistry at SUNY Plattsburgh in the North Country, and right out of undergrad was recruited to a startup company in Silicon Valley that was backed by Peter Thiel and the Founders Fund. So I really cut my teeth on, the entrepreneurial lifestyle, so to speak, while I was out there, kind of in the heyday of the Valley, and also completed an MBA online at the time. I wanted to have a better understanding of clinical medicine because, science, you can do a lot of science, but if you don't understand the practical applications of how drugs are going to be deployed in a clinical setting, it's easy to run into issues just not having the context. So I came out to Syracuse, New York to pursue an MD at SUNY Upstate Medical University. And during my second year of medical school, raised over $1 million to start Ichor in my living room at the time, which was kind of ridiculous. We had full cell biology labs. We had a small vivarium that had laboratory mice. So it was a really crazy time. But we were successful in kind of building the company out. After the 2 years of medical school, I completed a PhD in biochemistry and molecular biology. And while pursuing my graduate work, I raised over $30 million to continue to build Ichor in its portfolio of programs. So I didn't end up going back to finish the MD, unfortunately, and the company kind of took off at that point. And so from kind of those humble origins, we now have about a 24,000 square foot footprint, about 40 staff, and that's split roughly 50-50 between our offices in Lafayette and our offices at Peyton Hall at Clarkson in the North Country.
I wonder if we can turn to your expansion up in the North Country. Help me understand the nature of the collaboration with Clarkson, what that means for you and for the company, and where that positions you today.
Yeah, so Clarkson University is probably one of the most entrepreneurial and innovative universities that I've engaged with. I actually did ROTC through Clarkson way back in my undergrad days. I had done 1 year at SUNY Potsdam, so I'm familiar with the area. And being from the North Country, I recognize the immense potential of the North Country for pharmaceutical and biotech development specifically. You can get large amounts of land inexpensively. There's a lot of intellectual capital with the various universities that exist up there. It's really a good place to do the sort of work that we're doing. So we had talked to Tony Collins, who's the president of Clarkson University, and we basically agreed that Ichor Life Sciences would move up a significant portion of our assets and occupy the North Country Innovator at Peyton Hall as kind of an anchor tenant. And our goal was to be able to make our extensive infrastructure and assets available to support other startup companies and encourage the development of kind of a biotech and pharma cluster in Potsdam. And although we've only been there for a single year, we've been doing just that. Just in the last week, we announced Lento Bio, which is a startup company that we recruited out of Berkeley to relocate to Potsdam, and we're leading an investment round with that company developing ophthalmology drugs. We have several other companies in the queue that we're expecting to incentivize to relocate to Potsdam in the next couple of months. And really with this relationship, we're able to hire directly out of Clarkson, St. Lawrence, SUNY Potsdam to be able to, obtain high quality technicians and postdocs and so forth. Our skill sets and core competencies in structural biology and biophysics really complement Clarkson's expertise in engineering and chemistry, as well as their health sciences department, where we also have adjunct appointments. So I think there's kind of a perfect storm brewing up there of, deep technical expertise, but then also, with the health sciences component, having a real focus on translatability and, really taking these ideas and commercializing them in a real way.
I'm wondering too if you can talk about the culture, if you will, that you found in the North Country, and you just spoke very eloquently about your access to intellectual resources and assets. For many viewers of today's interview, their image of the North Country may not necessarily be of a technological hotspot or a fertile ground for collaboration, particularly in the life sciences. Your experience seems to suggest just the opposite, and I'm wondering, kind of, what's your sense? Is the perception wrong? Is the reality askew, or where is that mismatch?
Well, I think there's pros and cons to any area. A lot of the shortcomings, I lived in Silicon Valley. We're in Boston all the time for business reasons. But what we see with a lot of the companies that are based in, traditional biotech hotspots, employees aren't staying with the company very long. There's a lot of bouncing around. The actual cost to do work is insanely high because, wages are super high because cost of living is super high. Your real estate expenses are through the roof. When we started Ichor in Syracuse, I was able to buy my facility for the cost of 1 year's rent had I set up shop in San Diego or San Francisco. So simply on the cost side, there's a lot of reasons that Syracuse and the North Country make a lot of sense. In terms of kind of a entrepreneurial culture. I think that everyone that I've encountered in the North Country and in Central New York is really enthusiastic about building things, and they want to. There's people that like being in a rural area, but also want to be able to have high-paying jobs and do meaningful work, and that kind of work-life balance and the focus on kind of an entrepreneurial culture and actually building something is something that I find ingrained in the culture of these areas. The cultural ethos of the North Country, they're going to do it, right? There are people that are going to roll up the sleeves and just go build stuff. And to a large extent, when you're trying to do things that haven't been done before, or you're pursuing things that are very technically challenging, having that kind of work ethic is something that that I think companies can and should capitalize on, and it gives a lot of opportunities to to really build new things and take on challenging problems.
I note too that as a company, one of the things that seems to distinguish Ichor Life Sciences is, well, perhaps two things that seem to distinguish it. One, and you talked a little bit about it, was your own desire to be an investor, to help spur other startups and growth in that space, and also your commitment to professional development for your staff, your internship programs, your support of employees as they pursue advanced degrees and the like. You don't see a lot of people doing what you're doing in those spaces. What's the motivator for you? What brought you to that place?
A combination of things, and I think the main talking point in this regard is our PhD program. So when my CSO Aaron Wolf and I were kind of talking about it, when you do a PhD in kind of a traditional setting, you become very, very narrowly focused on just this one specific discipline, and you don't really get the breadth of what's actually out there, and you don't necessarily know how the very specific things that you're learning can apply to industrial workflows, for example, right? It's very academic and very nuance focused on one little thing. So with our PhD program, what we want to do is be able to teach the entire pipeline of drug development. So our students will come in and they'll track with skill sets in biochemistry and structural biology and biophysics. So understanding how molecules, how drugs interact with their targets at kind of a molecular level. Then those students get involved in testing those molecules on cells, and then ultimately testing them in mice and rats. And so through the course of the degree with us, students are able to see all aspects of a drug development pipeline. They understand what tools exist. They might not, they'll have one or two tools that they're deep experts in, but they'll have exposure to many, many other tools and understand how to deploy them to answer specific scientific questions. So the exposure to a full industrial workflow is something that I haven't really seen in most graduate programs, and that's something that we wanted to deliver. And that kind of dovetails very nicely, again, with Clarkson's focus on entrepreneurship and focus on, on health sciences. And our expectation is our grad students, as they complete their degrees, will be founding companies or at least running internal programs as if they were running the companies. And we're seeing that already with, our first cohorts that are preparing to graduate. So, our whole focus was, if we had a PhD program teach us exactly what we wish we had gotten in our educations, what would that look like? And we attempted to build that.
Well, listen, Kelsey, this has been a terrific conversation. I could frankly listen to you for quite some more time, but unfortunately, we're just about out of time. But I want to thank you and thank your team at Ichor Life Sciences. I think it's a terrific model that you've got going in the North Country, and one that I think will resonate with our audience. So thank you for spending the time with us, and folks who are interested in learning more can connect with Kelsey and his team at ichorlifesciences.com. So again, Kelsey Moody, thanks so much.
Always a pleasure, Wynn. Thank you.